Hello, and thank you again for tuning in to one of Leverage Monkey's analysis. Again, I didn't anticipate doing this, but saw something that I could, help inform some people that are not familiar. One of the things we're going to talk about in this analysis is the grayscale unlocking. There's a lot of confusion. X amount of bitcoins are being unlocked, and are they going to sell them and all that stuff. So uh, I'll go over with an overview of how Grayscale works. So Grayscale is a trust. It's a custodian. Pretty much all the Bitcoin that goes into Grayscale never has to be sold because trusts are not designed to sell. So they hold currently for GBTC, uh, 652,000 Bitcoins. The only reason those Bitcoins go down is the 2% fee is paid in Bitcoin to the Grayscale management. So that's the only Bitcoin that leaves Grayscale once it's acquired. So no, spot Bitcoin does not be sold once it enters in. Grayscale is trying to convert or going to convert once the SEC approves a ETF. They're going to convert the trust into an ETF. By far, no matter who gets the Bitcoin ETF first, Grayscale already has the first movers advantage. You'll hear that a lot, first movers advantage. It's basically the advantage of the person that moves first. In an industry, they usually are the biggest one of the monopoly or the oligopoly, uh, where there's a bunch of, two or three that pretty much dominate all the market shares. So Grayscale will be the first mover's advantage because they already obtained 652,000 Bitcoins. No matter what Bitcoin ETF gets approved first, there's no way they're going to have 652,000 Bitcoins by the time that Grayscale converts to an ETF. So usually the largest ETF has the lowest fees. So GBTC, when it does convert, is most likely going to be the gorilla. With that said, back to the Bitcoin and the unlocking. What happens is accredited investors, at the beginning of the year, GBTC had a premium, 10, 15, upwards of 25% over spot Bitcoin. The reason it did is because a lot of investment funds could not invest in Bitcoin directly because they weren't allowed to. So it was a way of getting exposure to Bitcoin without owning spot Bitcoin directly, as they weren't allowed to. Um, they applied maybe to buy spot Bitcoin to get approval, but didn't have it yet. So they got exposures through GBTC, or wealth clients got exposures through GBTC. So what they did in January, I think it was January or February, they stopped taking direct placements into the fund, into the trust, because they were anticipating converting it to the ETF. There's a 6-month lockup period when an investment is made. And so they didn't want to take any more money in and buy more spot Bitcoin because they wanted to be ready if an ETF was available. Here we are 6 months later, and the ETF is being put off by the SEC. So it's not available. But that's the reason why Bitcoin pretty much ran up to 65, was partially because of Grayscale acquiring 652,000 Bitcoins really pushed it higher. So an accredited investor buys into the GBTC, and what's the advantage of that? At the time, there was a 10 to 25 premium. Accredited investors could invest into GBTC and pretty much get in at spot. So they didn't have to pay the 10 to 25% premium. they pretty much got that immediately, but they couldn't sell for 6 months. So they did, but they didn't. So these accredited investors were, some of them very sophisticated. What they did was they acquired they became the accredited investor into GBTC, put their money in to hedge that position. You hear terms like contango and backwardation. Um, these sophisticated investors wanted to hedge that position. Some of them began to either add short positions to spot Bitcoin through other instruments or directly to hedge their position with GBTC, and so on. So here we are now, through July through May and July, you've heard about a bunch of unlocking of Bitcoins. It's the equivalent of Bitcoin. They don't actually get spot Bitcoin. Their shares are unlocked. They can sell the shares of GBTC, and GBTC shares will go down in value, but they can't get Bitcoin. Really, they can't get Bitcoin out of the trust. Once Bitcoin takes your money, buys the spot Bitcoin, and issues the shares, you now have shares. You can't get spot Bitcoin. So it's the equivalent that they're talking about when they talk about, for example, this one that's unlocking or just unlocked on the 18th today is about 41,000 Bitcoins from what I heard. So it's a total of the past 2-3 months of about 110 to 150,000 Bitcoins that were unlocked. But that's the equivalent. It's the shares that are unlocked. So there's no way for spot Bitcoin to be sold. So that misconception, people have. I've tried to explain online, on Twitter and stuff like that, and even they take my words and twist it. So that's why I'm doing this video to help people better understand. So with the unlocking, there's two scenarios that can happen. One of them is that the so-called composite operator of the Wyckoff distribution and accumulation is in fact the GBTC shareholders that are being unlocked, and that they pushed Bitcoin's price down here to be able to accumulate spot Bitcoin. Problem is they own GBTC shares that they want to sell for more money. So right now GBTC has a negative premium. At 65, it had a positive premium. Now it has a negative premium. It's selling below spot Bitcoin. For the amount of shares that you get, you're getting a discount. I believe it's like 8 or 10%, 11%. There's been some buying from Kathy Wood at ARK Investment. So it fluctuates depending on if she's buying a boatload of shares or not. But last time I heard, I believe it was somewhere around 8%. So it went from a 10 to 25% premium up at 50, 65,000 Bitcoin down here where we're at 31,500 Bitcoin to about an 8% negative premium. So that's a problem for them. They want to sell, of course, their GBTC for as much money as they can get. But they did get that when they bought in, they got it spot. So pretty much right now they're down 8%. And they possibly hedged with shorting, so they made a good amount of money shorting that makes up for that 8%. But the question is do they still have their short position hedges on that they need to release, which, as you might know, when you release a short position, you're buying to cover. So it's a buy. You have to buy Bitcoin, spot Bitcoin back. Because when you short, you borrow spot Bitcoin, you sell it with the promise that you're going to buy it back. And you're hoping the price goes down and you buy it back cheaper and you can keep the difference. That's basically the logistics of shorting. So they want to buy back their shorts cheaper in spot Bitcoin, which 31,500, we're at about the 61.8, 1.681 fib level, which has held as support in past bear markets. So this would be a good part for them to cover their short position, their hedges. Then it would be good for them to, if this was a Wyckoff accumulation and was them to accumulate, because as you know, they started to be pretty much unlocked when this Wyckoff accumulation started. So this could be them starting to accumulate. They still have 41,000 more worth of Bitcoin to accumulate here. And once they accumulate here, this is a possible scenario. Once they accumulate their 41,000 here and cover their short positions, then they bring it up. Remember, we didn't get that bounce that I talked about in my previous videos. We didn't get that normal bear market bounce here. The reason why could be because they distributed here and went short. They brought it down here. They started to be unlocked here. They started accumulating what they needed with their shares unlocked. And they started accumulating here with the remainder of the shares. They still have all of their GBTC. They haven't sold any yet. They're going to then rally Bitcoin back up to 50,000, where they distribute their GBT shares and distribute the Bitcoin that they bought here. And then they come down to fill those two liquidity voids that I talked about in my earlier video. Because these liquidity voids are eventually going to get filled. They should get filled. They're easy for them to fill. So they could go up here and distribute and come back and fill. This is what's called fractal. Pretty much it's when a market is breaking down. It comes down, it touches the 55 week EMA, then it rallies back up, which the 55-week EMA happens to be right here at 28,600. It did touch the 55-week EMA, which lines up with the fractal. And then also it then rallies up to the 61.8 fib level retracement. So you go from the low, the 28,600, and you go from the high, the almost 65,000. You get the 61.8. That's where Bitcoin would rally up if it was in fractal, which would be about 52,000. It would then sit here for about 2 weeks, is what it normally does in the past bear markets. It's about 2 weeks that it rallies above the 61.8. It hangs out above the 61.8 for about 2 weeks, and then it comes back down, and then it breaks below. Hold on, this is the 4 hour. Let me switch to the 1 day. Get my, let me say it correctly this time too. It is the 21 month EMA, which I talked about earlier. That it comes down, it bounces, it tests, it rides along, and then it breaks below. Whales accumulate, and then it does a Wyckoff accumulation here with the final spring capitulation, and then it starts its markup. That could happen again here, but we're doing something different. If, in fact, the GBTC shareholders are the composite operator in Wyckoff, those are the people pulling the strings, is the composite operator. It's a group of people. 140, 150,000 Bitcoins is a lot of Bitcoins, so it's quite possible the GBTC shareholders are the composite operator. But from here, there is a scenario where they could bring it up, distribute their shares at 52,000, which is the 61.8 that we didn't get here. about 2 weeks. They'll distribute any shares they accumulated here and their GBT shares that they accumulate that they have here. They're supposed to be covering their shorts right now. If they were to do this plan, they would then bring it up, distribute both their spot, whatever spot they accumulated here. They don't have any shorted positions anymore. Then they accumulate their GBTC shares here, and they completed the fractal. So then they come back down and they would search for these voids, these liquidity voids, which is where they would backfill and accumulate, and possibly could accumulate down to the all-time high, the old all-time high, and the bottom, which is just below just about 16 to 20K. But in the past, normally Bitcoin, in the very past bear markets, it has touched the all-time high. But this last bear market, it did not touch the all-time high. It actually held here at the 61.8, 161.8 held. So it is quite possible that the GBTC shareholders are the composite operator and that they will be doing this. So just wanted to clear that up. They don't get spot Bitcoin. Once you get shares issued for the trust, you have shares. And so that's my video on GBTC unlock. It could be a good thing. It could be a catapult up after basically tomorrow. We still do have the Janet Yellen with the CBDCs. We still do have regulation. The SEC did just push off basically the ETF. We're not going to get it until probably first quarter of next year. And even then, the ETF is going to provide liquidity for Bitcoin. So that could be a good thing or a bad thing. They're going to be allowed to short the ETF. So that could be a bad thing because the ETF will have to buy and sell, and then they'll be shorting it and putting money in. So that could quite move the market as well, especially with GBTC, 652,000 Bitcoins. It's about $30 billion. 30, it almost hit 40 billion when we were at up here. It was about almost $40 billion was the trust. So, but that's about it. GBTC could be the composite operator. We could bounce here and go up to 52K, the 61.8. They distribute, complete the fractorial, which is down to the 55-week EMA, then bounce up to the 61.8, and then break back down again. And then that's when those voids would be filled. So that is the other scenario, and the scenario with GBTC being the composite operator. Thank you for watching. TradingView keeps deleting my videos because they claim I'm advertising, so I can't say much else. But thank you for watching.